Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home program. I'm Damian Holbrook from TV Guide magazine. Before we are joined by our guest today, I want to let you know that the SAG-AFTRA Foundation is a nonprofit organization that relies entirely on donations to provide emergency assistance and free educational programs to SAG-AFTRA artists. This conversation is made possible thanks to the generosity of our supporters. Over the past year, the foundation has given over $6.5 million in COVID relief to more than 7,000 performers. If you're a SAG-AFTRA artist and need help, please ask. And if you can help, please give. Information can be found in the description of this video. Thank you for your support. Now, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Henry Lloyd-Hughes, Thalissa Teixeira, and Lucy Hale of RAGDOLL. Congratulations, guys. I've now seen the first 3 episodes, and
what?
I know!
Way more than we have.
It is such a ride. Like, literally, the twist comes so fast. Like, so let's just talk about this first. Explain for the viewers, the people that are watching this, let's talk about these characters first. Henry, explain who Nathan Rose is.
Nathan Rose is a detective who has spent some time away from the police force due to his own despicable misadventure, to put it mildly, and is coming back at possibly the worst time he could to try and solve a case that includes a serial killer, 6 bodies stitched into one, and a kill list of which his name is on the kill list.
Yes.
So that's Nathan Rose and where we find him at the beginning of the show.
And Thalissa, your character was his partner, but now she's his boss.
Excellent. I think that's all you need to know. She's coming at the best moment of her career. Baxter, she is DI. She has worked below Rose before, is now in charge, has now got Edmonds as extra help, although I'm sure Edmonds solves a lot more of the clues than Baxter does. And yes, is in the sticky predicament of being in charge of London's most vulgar thing. I was going to call it a person, but it's not. It's a body. It's a body made up of lots of bodies.
Yeah. And Lucy, you're the American that's coming into this. How did she land in this department? What is she doing there?
One of my big questions, how did she land such a good gig so early on in her career?
Right.
No, she's a DC, which is detective constable, which on the pyramid of detectives is sort of at the bottom. So she's, I guess you could call it assisting Baxter, or is sort of the, what would you call it, Thalissa? She helps out Baxter mostly.
I mean, they're all very necessary though.
No, very, very necessary. But I guess Rose is my boss. Baxter is both of our bosses.
Okay.
So
I could tell both of them to be quiet. Rose could tell Edmonds to be quiet.
And
Exactly.
Edmonds does not tell anyone to be quiet, but Edmonds will tell everyone to be quiet.
She will speak her mind. If you didn't know, she will talk and she will talk and she will talk. But, I love that about her. I think that she probably should filter out some of it, but she makes a lot of really good points. And I think that she's the person in the show that just leads with her feelings and wears her heart on her sleeve, and which is kind of an interesting dynamic in this field of work she's chosen, because you actually have to check your feelings at the door. But she tries to make a point with, especially Rose, that like, your mental health can change this case for us. It can change how you approach the case. It can change facts of a case. So she kind of is the person who is saying what we're all thinking, but actually has the guts to say it. Like you said, she is the American. We don't really know how long she's been here or what she's running away from, but we know that something in her life has happened that has led her to this point in her life. She's running away from something.
You've all got secrets. You all have secrets. Actually, Nathan probably has the least secrets because he's made such a mess of his life. It's all an open book. Everybody knows who he is. Everybody knows what he's done. The tone of the show is fascinating to me because obviously, it's from some people who worked on Killing Eve, and Henry, you worked with them, but it's dark, it's funny, it's thrilling. And for American audiences, I also think it's very educational, because the way the police in London approach cases are very different from like normal American cop shows.
That's interesting. Very interesting. In what way, Damian? How do you think it's going to be educational?
I feel like they're going to realize how integral other departments are.
Mm.
You know, the fact that you bring in witness protection, you bring in certain other groups of people and how you work together. And also, and I don't want to spoil anything because maybe, you know, maybe there's problems within the police force in London as well as there are in America.
Absolutely.
But what did you guys think when you first read the script and saw how tonally it's vibrant?
Yeah, I mean,
oh, go on, Annie. Go.
No. You go.
We were talking a lot about the humor in it over the last day or so. That there's something very human in this, in the way that the humor has been put into these characters' mouths. Freddie Sideboard is a comedy genius, as well as possibly a little problematic with the kind of images that he manages to create. But he has definitely what all three of us, and they can let me know if I'm wrong, but what's something that we all loved so much about the script is that the use of humor in the show was as a coping mechanism. It was something that, I mean, very British humor as well, very sarcastic and quite ironic, but very much a armor to hide behind. And you see it in the scene where you see the ragdoll for the first time, that they instantly, you know, start pulling out their biggest one-liners. So it's definitely through vulnerability that these characters are funny, which just makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, and he would challenge me. Like Freddie would be on set, and we would challenge, you know, set dramatic challenges to see, even in the darkest moments that Rose was going through, or even in the darkest moments that like really macabre stuff, whether there could be a gag that could be thrown in. And it's not necessarily even something that was, you know, so sometimes they didn't make the cut, I'm sure, but it was always that challenge to be like, what is the most human way of, as Thalissa said, what is the most human way of telling this terrifying story? And for a lot of people, especially in, you know, first responders, as they're called, and in England, you know, it's humor. That is the currency by which you can bond, you can make the day go quicker, faster, and frankly, sometimes just survive.
Right.
So we were always, I mean, Freddie was always kind of arming us with as many and furnishing us with as many opportunities to try and have insert that lightness, and I think it's managed to make its way on screen, you know.
Oh, definitely.
And I think has it lends itself to quite a unique flavor, you know, like, as you say, it probably owes that in some of the stylistic flourishes there's a little bit of that Killing Eve style in there, but this is the quips here. It's like the horror's gone up, but also the jokes have been turned up as well.
There's even a moment in the third episode with Thalissa, and it's an actual moment.
Tell me, I've actually forgotten what happened.
So there's an actual bit of physical comedy regarding an arrest where you need a fingerprint, and it's like, it's so normal. It's not played as a joke, it's not played as a gag, but it's like, this is what you might have to do with somebody in cuffs. Lucy, I know this is your jam. You love this stuff. You love the dark. We've talked about this before. When you got this script, like, how did this, how did Pretty Little Liar go from, you know, Rosewood and like evil twins to literal bodies stitched together in a dank apartment in London?
Damian, it only makes sense. It only made sense. No, I think we've talked about this many times. You know, I love shows like this. You know, I love this genre. And I got sent this script and was like, I was so excited because I love Killing Eve. And I think that show is so unique in the play on the darkness and the humor. It just really worked. And so I got sent this script, and honestly, I saw Ragdoll, and I'm thinking what I was thinking of Ragdoll was not what ended up being the Ragdoll. So I went in with no clue what I was about to read, only that it came from the creators of Killing Eve. And the more I got, I read that in one sitting. I reread it 3 times that first day. Like, I loved the characters. I loved, Freddie Syborn, who did the writing. Like, I was fascinated how he wrote for a young female American, but it was actually how I talk. So right. He's just brilliant. He really the writing was always there. We've already talked about the humor. I loved that aspect. I obviously love the whodunit aspect. But I was really, and when I got the script, I knew that this was something I was going to have to audition for. I knew it wasn't going to be like, hey, Lucy, come over to London and like be a part of it, because it just wasn't that type of project. I knew I was going to have to show what I can do and prove that I can do this. And that was really scary and really exciting. So I did my little tape and, did the best I could. And it turned out they really liked it. And then I did some Zooms. It's so weird doing everything virtually, but met with Toby, our amazing Toby McDonald, who directed the first 3 episodes, which you have seen. And they were really great about, Edmonds was already there on the page. Like, I kind of knew exactly who she was, but I'm sure Thalissa and Henry can agree that everyone involved just kind of let us play and sort of have fun and create these characters. Because my character Edmonds was actually a man in the book. So I was like, okay, I don't know if I'm gonna read it. But
right. Did any of you guys read it? Like, did any of you read the books?
Well, Thalissa probably read the most of it.
I read the most, and then I was also the most confusing person to act with for the first few days, because I was like, no. I'm pretty sure you're in love with this person, and that had been changed. And then the order at which we find out information has changed. Right. And obviously we're not filming it in order anyway. So it was very confusing. So, I was advised to just kind of stick with.
And then I was going off to Lisa's confusion, and I stopped reading it.
Oh, great!
And Lucy was just like, "Well, I'm a dude, so I'm definitely not going to stop reading."
I don't need to.
Right? Like, I know, like, Nathan's character is a different name in the book, but Lucy's character is a different gender.
Yeah.
And now, you guys said you filmed, like, the big iconic scene from the first episode is the discovery of the ragdoll corpse. But you didn't film that early on, correct? That was later on in the production, right? So what was that like? Because at that point, I'm sure you guys had already bonded, but 12 hours in a room with that monstrosity had to be pretty connecting.
Yeah, the big reveal was certainly like a show-stopping moment, because it's such an amazing piece of art. I mean, you could literally hang it in an art gallery. I mean, it would be a weird gallery, but
very Damien Hirst.
Yes, I was thinking of Damien Hirst. The amount of work that's gone into this thing is astonishing. So, and I've said this before, but it was they had to set it up for a couple of days, and people kept on going into this room, and it was all very secretive. And in the apartment, it was a studio build. One of the few studio builds, and they said you can go in. We've got it ready, and I said no. We'll do it on the day. Now it turns out it was a very long day that we spent in, but so by the end of the day we were old friends. The hanging corpse and I. But that initial moment.
I disagree, but okay.
Okay, that initial moment was certainly enough to knock Thalissa off her feet and certainly leave me open-mouthed, because it was it was a sensory feast, shall we say.
Mm-hmm. And there is a first of all, I have to say, Lucy, your character late in the 3rd episode mentions to Nathan Wawa. You say that you spent 3 years hiding in the Wawa parking lot. Which is a very specific location and name drop.
Yeah. So, Damian, I bet you've been to Wawa's because
God.
You're East Coast. So I've never been to a Wawa, and you're gonna have
But
to.
you did
explain-
know what it was, Lucy. You
I
did
knew
know
what
what
a
it was
Wawa- a
because
Wawa-
I asked you. I said when we were
I
doing
don't
the
know
scene,
what
I was like, "What?" I was like,
It's
"What
like
is a
a-
Wawa?"
What is a Wawa?
7-Eleven,
It's
right?
like a 7-Eleven.
Yeah,
But
it's like
it's an East Coast convenience store, but it's like it's a big deal in Philadelphia and parts of New York and parts of South New Jersey. So when you mention this, it clearly tells me where Edmonds came from.
I think we were saying she's from Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah, she's
Originally,
from
she was
Jersey.
gonna be from the Carolinas, and
Okay.
then there was something with her storyline. They needed to go a little more north,
Okay.
so we went to
Yeah.
Jersey, I guess.
Which is very like because Wawa is getting a great moment right now because it also played very heavily in Mayor of Easttown on
Let's
HBO.
say Kate Winslet talks about.
Wow.
Yes. So we get these little pieces about Edmund's backstory, but the relationship between Baxter and Nathan is, we know parts of it, but what we find out so much is that there's this deep, deep friendship. And with deep, deep friendship comes at times deep hurts. And there is a level of, I feel on Baxter's part, a little codependency, and we find out why she's so loyal to this man who's kind of on paper a mess. What was it like for you two to be building this relationship that goes back years that we don't get to see?
I mean, Heather and I actually knew each other before we started filming.
Yes,
this.
we had a little head start, Damian. Little
Right.
head
We
start.
did have a head start, which was so bliss to not have to, I mean, working
Going
with people
cold,
that you absolutely adore is just sensational anyway. But yeah, I mean, I think that all of these characters, they all need each other. And I think also Baxter needs Edmonds. Later on in the series, you'll see that they absolutely rely on each other completely. And actually, Edmonds manages to pull the wool off Baxter's eyes a little bit as well in terms of her relationship with Rose. But I mean, I think that there's something about Baxter that we were talking about this earlier, that, Freddie wrote a really fascinating backstory for Baxter to try and, he's written such intricate characters, and it might not necessarily make any sense to actually see these backstories that Freddie had talked about. But something that he mentioned to me that made a lot of sense was this idea that the police force was kind of her first family, really, that she really had. And possibly these people in her lives were brothers and sisters to her. She finally felt like at home here. And Rose becomes someone that, because of the seesaw effect of who's boss in their relationship, and also like what they've witnessed together, is something that binds them together. I think we kept talking about, like, there's a thing later on in the series, I can't speak about my work to the average human like I can with you. It's so intense, it's so vulgar and traumatic, and you're the only person that's also seen these limbs, but also understands how much we have to keep it together. And I think that the bond is situational, of course. They've survived together and they've kept each other going. But there's utter respect, and also they work in very different ways. So I think they complement each other very well in that sense.
It's very interesting because the relationship is so clearly connected to their job and what they're doing and what they've gone through. But Edmonds is really the first one to bring up what Nathan has gone through with his mental health situation. It's never addressed by anyone else. Like, how are you doing? Are you saying, it's like staying on top of this? Edmonds is the first one, and we've talked about that as well. It's like she's the one who will create space for that. And
we need an American. We need an American to do some plain speaking, Damian, because you can go 20 years in this country without saying the most obvious truth sometimes, depending on who the person is.
Key of ayahuasca in the flat. And I'm not going to be triggered next time I hear MC Hammer and, are you asking me if I'm okay? It's kind of the exchange that Baxter and Rosa, and that's her way of saying, right, I love you, I hope you're okay, please don't collapse on me, by these jokes, really.
Whereas Edmonds is like, she comes from a world where we're like, let's talk out our problems.
She literally goes, but what about your mental health, Rose? So she shoots it straight.
Yeah, and we know, we keep seeing peaks of like, it's not great.
Yeah.
She's got a point.
How much did you know about how much pain and how broken this character was when you took it on? Because as it plays out, like, we find out he's far more desperate than he's letting on.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I knew from the get-go that there was, I knew about the past, and I knew that all of this stuff from the past was going to be completely interwoven. I think weirdly, maybe I underestimated the practicalities of actually doing that. Like, I remember that scene, by which I mean, Damian, intercutting with the past and the present in the middle of a scene.
Right.
And I remember saying to Thalissa and Lucy, like, trying to, and obviously when you watch it, it makes sense. But do you remember that scene in the underground parking garage? And that scene, Lucy, where you had to say, what about Rose? What about your mental health? And at the beginning of that scene, and like dotted throughout various other scenes, we would do these like basically like weird flashback, like a special camera setup in which I had to like travel back in time and go back to the facility where I was. But it was just like really insanely hard to do as an actor, because you're doing the scene, you're having to do the scene and do the scene as the contemporary character, but then you're also almost doing like another version of the scene where you do these other looks that belong to the past. And I definitely think I maybe underestimated just how technically challenging that was going to be, to constantly be having to do the quantum leap thing.
Right. Because it is like he's triggered at times, and we see, and it's weird because sometimes we're not told why he's being triggered by something.
No, exactly. Sometimes it's clear, sometimes it's not. Yeah.
Okay, so and on top of all this, so everyone's got their baggage. You're also dealing with an incredibly grisly case where you've been given the list of victims ahead of time. And I mean, I don't think it doesn't take a brain surgeon. It's 6 episodes and there are 6 names. There is a sense of urgency to this story, because it's like, as we go through that list, we get closer and closer to Nathan's character. What was it like for you guys filming this in COVID? How speedy was this done?
Oh, we filmed like an action film in the space of 4 months, which was, I mean, I keep talking about the crew were just wizards, and people that were, doing absolutely everything to make it look realistic in seconds. It was absolutely extraordinary.
The pace of it was bonkers. The pace of it was absolutely bonkers. And now when I'm watching it back, I cannot believe how much they pack into each episode. I mean, it just looks, it's a sprint. It's an absolute sprint to the finish. And look, Damian, you're ahead of us. You've seen more than we have. So like, but to my memory, it doesn't let up.
It does not.
Doesn't let up.
Yeah. It's almost like, I'm still thinking like we might still be in the same, like maybe 2-a-day span by the 3rd episode. Like, we're not even a week in.
Yeah. No. You were right. And insanely, it was like
Rose
quite
wears
late.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm like throughout all 6 episodes.
I keep up with
By pants, I mean underwear.
Yeah. Oh, right. That's right. Because there is at least one night where we see, And Lucy, how was it for you? How different was this from an American production? Because usually a series is like 8 days of filming.
Well, I'm used to network TV, which is like much bigger seasons, which being on the other side of this, 6 episodes is so perfect because it's more about, you get the quality of the characters in the show, as opposed to, you know how it is for like 25 episode shows. It's nuts. But I was used to working with a new director, like getting the scripts the night before, and just, you kind of just like somehow pull it together. At least for the first block, we had time, right? We had a lot more time with the first 3 episodes. We had one director for the first 3 episodes and another director for the second block. Right. We didn't have as much time for the second block. Henry, I don't know, both of you, like I got a little more of a break. I don't know how you guys did all that you did. It was truly impressive. But I mean, it, like they said, it was a sprint. It was a lot. There was fire, there was water, there was stunts, there was chaos, there was like everything was a moment, I felt like. And on top of that, we were shooting a show safely during COVID. So there was like that added layer of everything. God, what a team though. The crew, you guys are legendary. Everyone was like on board and on the same page. And I think that that's what made it work. Cause I can imagine with some of the elements not there, it could have been really crazy.
I mean, Nick Gillard, our stunt coordinator, who's an original Jedi, right?
So literally, he's
an actual Jedi.
And Indiana Jones.
And he's Indiana Jones. Yeah, I mean, we had the best of the best doing this. So, I mean, a lot of the time he'd also jump in and pretend to be all three of us at one point. I'm pretty sure he was all three of us. But it was, we had to have the most phenomenal crew and you know, stunt coordinators and stunts to just pull this off with no accidents. It was amazing.
Oh, Damon, I'll tell you another difference. You know, in LA, if there's a cloud in the sky, they'll call the day off. Yep. Like, go home, we're done. But obviously in the UK, like things just change like every 5 minutes. And there would be moments where it'd be pouring rain and I'm freaking out, panicking, thinking we're going to be done. And everyone just puts the plastic over the camera, puts their ponchos on, and we just keep going.
There's one scene in particular, Lucy, that it was like, I leave a house and it is full on sunshine. And we tried to shoot this and it was like a monsoon. And there's a bit of that scene left in the cut and it doesn't look quite as sunny. I'm not going to tell you which.
Henry, you have a chase scene. I think it's in episode 2 or 3. I think it's 3. So you're chasing Mark Cooper.
2.
Yeah.
2.
That's 2.
You cover so much ground in this sequence.
Yeah, but
you
know
chase
what's
the
depressing?
guy. It feels like a 4-minute chase scene.
What's depressing, Damian, is firstly, thank you for saying it lasts as long as it did, because I genuinely ran about 10 miles that day. And then when I watched it in the edit, I was like, nah, that's not enough. That's not enough. Like, I was sprinting all day. Because every time they do a setup, there's never a bit where I'm like, just like coasting,
no, you're full on
coasting for a bit. Like, where is he? It's a proper like cat and mouse. He's in the shot. I'm in the shot. And
it's true that the guy that fell over.
Oh yeah.
Yes. The guy that fell in the bush was a real guy that fell in the bush, and everyone laughed so hard. We were just like, we have to keep that in.
Because it's in the scene.
It's in the scene.
Real.
He fell, and we kept on saying, you could train a stunt guy for like 6 weeks and he wouldn't do a fall that was that good. He properly, like, his feet waving in the bush, like, it was astonishing. It was like Mr. Bean. It was astonishing.
And Thalissa, it feels like Baxter has a uniform.
I'm so glad you say that.
Yeah, it's like, I noticed that because, you know, like you hear Killing Eve and you're like, oh, these fashions are going to be amazing. And literally, like, Lucy's in an Urban Outfitters outfit the entire time with like the t-shirt and the layered neck.
But actually, you're
like,
right.
Chuck Taylors, and you're in this, like, it's almost like the same look every day. The black sweater, the white shirt. Like, what was that a choice as well?
I spoke to Ellie, our designer, at the start. When I first got the script, I was like, what about this character she's got such an armor of like making sure that she turns up to work. And also because it's one of the first jobs that she's in charge. And I think that there's all the vulnerability of that. I spoke to Ellie and I was like, can I look like Patti Smith, please? It was just really great to think that, you know, you had a uniform that feels like she can hide behind it. Also, these characters don't have time to think about fashion or anything. So she's got a white shirt, a waistcoat, trousers, and the same boots. You know,
that's it, right?
Going back to your earlier point, Damian, I think the whole series takes place over 5 days or something insane like that.
Yeah.
So she doesn't really get to change a lot. However, okay, so she's also a woman of color in a powerful position within this organization. How is that addressed in the show?
Yeah, I mean, there was something that I loved about the script straight away, because Freddie was also from the get-go he sort of put his hands in the air and was like, I'm the writer and these are the words that I've written, but let's have a conversation about something that feels very authentic for you. And he nailed it, and it was very authentic from the get-go. But you know, the fact that she's got this very heavy institutionalized racism in amongst the work, not only does she have to solve crime, but she also has to, you know, keep her head up and keep going, is one of the challenges that I thought this feels very authentic, and I want to tell that. And later on in the season, in the series, you see that sort of become a tighter knot, really, in terms of she becomes kind of the face of this because she's young, brown, and a woman. And I think, you know, the mistakes that she makes, they probably should discipline her in a different way, but because of optics and what it would look like to denote someone like me, it becomes a very sticky situation. It becomes more and more complex as the story continues.
And Lucy, you're one of the only other women on the case. When we see the station, it's like you and Baxter.
Yeah, it's like it's dude central, a lot of testosterone there. But I think that
Lord of the Flies.
yeah, exactly. But I think that we don't really say, once again, how Edmonds got to this point or why she's there. But I think that she definitely has done her research and really respects Baxter. So I want to say that she like sought it out because she wanted to follow in her footsteps and so respects what she's done. And there's a couple of comments along the way of, you know, she just adores Baxter. You know, she wants to know she asked her if she's frozen her eggs. Like, she wants to know every part of her. And I think that eventually towards the end, they kind of, Baxter accepts Edmonds a little more, I'd say, but Edmonds really has to fight for it. But I think Edmonds really respects how Baxter can just hold her own in a man's world and being a woman of color and just like owning her space. At least I think that's how Edmonds sees her. And
I think they both learn something from each other. I think there's something that Edmonds manages to teach Baxter about, you know, spoken about this, the openness and the fact that you have to self-reflect to be able to be better at your job. I think Baxter's also tightly bound into this idea that, you know, I'll just keep going and I'll be tough about it. And actually there's something so beautiful that she learns from Edmonds' openness. I don't know if you agree, Lucy, but
I definitely do.
And does Edmonds ever get to like kind of stand up to Nathan? Because we talked, Henry, earlier about he's so mean to her.
I mean, what the hell? I know. Edmonds definitely has her moments. I mean, what I also love about her is that she can appear kind of, almost called you Rose. Henry, what you said about yourself appearing sweet, I also feel like Edmonds at the beginning appears, at least the way it's edited, appears a little more naive and sweet than I had thought, but I think it works later on in the storyline. But what I do love about Edmonds is that she does kind of stand her ground with Rose. She's like, don't talk to me that way. Like, I don't respond to that tone. And like, I love our elevator scene where she like softly gets a dig at you. But I think from the beginning, she also respects Rose. I think she knows he's like unwell, very unwell, but she knows he's really smart. I think she cares about him. I think that she cares about his mental health. I think that that's shown later on in the series. But where was I going with this?
Does she stand up for Rose?
No. I think, you know, she obviously really respects Baxter, but she respects the way Rose works, even though it's probably not the traditional way a detective should work. I think she really admires him, but also is equally as suspicious of him and confused.
She doesn't get pushed over. She's not a pushover with him. I think she we'll see what happens exactly, but
it all started with a donut worry shirt. I knew something was up.
Yes.
In that moment.
Now, as we get closer to the end, because again, it's a tight 6 episodes. When serial killers are getting close to either being captured or the end of their plan, sometimes they get messy or they get a little bit more volatile, which can put all 3 of you in the crosshairs. How bad does it get for this trio on screen by the time we get to the end?
Trey.
Yeah.
Really bad, like the worst, like just really bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't really say anything, but Lucy's. I mean, no one's having a great time. No.
Who would you say had the toughest scene to film?
Oh, I mean, it gets bad for everybody. Honestly, like, we're not well by the end.
Yeah.
What's sad and what's difficult for them is that their relationships become more tainted by what the exhaustion of this killer, and that's something as well that is so frustrating, that the killer knows these characters by the end very well. So he knows what would aggravate them the most, and I think that's why it gets so difficult for them.
Yeah, equal parts, Damian. Emotional torture and physical torture.
Oh,
that's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah,
that's all I'm gonna say. That's all I can say, literally.
Right.
But you know, take those two phrases and divvy them up amongst the cast. There you go.
Paramedics become a bigger part in our,
Right.
in our scene.
Maybe those costumes get a little dirtier, a little wetter.
Yeah.
All right, well, listen, you guys.
Trainers are no longer white.
Exactly, right. All right, well, thank you guys so much. On behalf of SAG-AFTRA Foundation, I want to thank you for sharing your experiences, process, and craft with your fellow performers and with me. And thank you guys so much. The show is so good. And everyone, don't forget, AMC Plus Ragdoll, it drops first episode on November 11th. You guys, thank you so much. Big applause. Thank you.
Thank you, Damian. Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks, Damian.